The theme that I chose is teaching characteristics and learning styles, and specifically management styles, which was from chapter 7, part 3. So I'm going to refer to my teacher as Mrs. S, and I'll refer to the school as Happy Valley Elementary, just for privacy purposes. I absolutely loved observing her classroom. Happy Valley Elementary is just a regular school in a rural area. It's not a Title I school or anything like that, because although there are some low-income families that attend this school, it's not actually what the school is known for, and the majority of the students are not considered like super low income or living in poverty, and they're primarily white. However, there is some diversity among the students and the faculty. However, compared to some of the other schools in the area, there is not as much diversity. So what I'm going to discuss today with you guys is about classroom management styles, is how they associate with the student's learning and what effective management actually looks like. So I was really able to see firsthand through my observations how classroom management can affect a student's academic success. Thankfully, I was observing effective management throughout my designated hours, and I was able to compare it to my past observations from when I was substitute teaching, where I saw the effects of less or non-effective management styles. And there honestly is a huge difference in behavior and in academic success depending on the management styles that children receive. I do know the librarian and the PE teacher at this particular school, and I would stop in briefly to chat with them after my observations, and I'd ask them how their classes were going that day so far, and literally they both would say how the most well-behaved class was Mrs. S's class by far, and I do believe it. I've never seen such a well-behaved kindergarten class. I was honestly blown away every week. I mean, they weren't perfect, no classes, but they were pretty dang close. And I want to share with you all the behaviors, characteristics, and teaching styles that Mrs. S uses that I believe make her style of management so effective, and kind of show how they relate to what we have learned about management styles for teaching characteristics and student learning in our textbook this semester. This is so important because if the teacher doesn't have an effective management style, students may not reach their highest potential for that year of school, which can put them behind in the following grades. And non-effective management can also negatively impact a student's self-esteem, and therefore may negatively impact their self-concept and their motivation to learn. And long-term effects can include kids dropping out of school, not going to college, not getting the best kinds of jobs, and even things as severe as living in poverty when they're older and on their own, and even being homeless. So success all starts with the teacher's behaviors, characteristics, and teaching styles. And our textbook describes effective management styles as teachers being on alert, not overreacting, squashing minor problems before they become major problems, being quick to react, having a class that kind of runs itself, and encouraging self-regulation. And looking back on my time with Mrs. S's class, I did observe every single one of these effective management qualities daily. The first day I did observe some off-task disruptive behavior. However, I think it was just a fluke because the rest of my days were great. You know, Mrs. S was on top of all the behaviors immediately before they became issues that would require consequences. Students were pretty well behaved, and when they were having trouble staying on task or choosing good behavior, the rest of the day she'd redirect them with a calm, positive tone to avoid further disruption, which worked like a charm. Effective classroom managers also set realistic expectations for their students. They're motivating, they act as mentors, they model desired behavior, and get creative. Again, I observed all these different parts of being an effective manager. She had a set of expectations for her students up on the board for their behavior that just kind of stays there year round. And then she also had on a giant easel in the front of the classroom. She had written out the learning targets for the Common Core standards that they're currently working on in the form of I can statements, like you'd see like in a written lesson plan. I really love this idea and am definitely implementing this into my own classroom someday to hold myself and my students accountable. An example of her showing mentor behavior was when I observed her guiding her students through their worksheets, showing them different ways to find the answers during their math rotations to the math problems, kind of giving her tips and tricks. And so I thought that was pretty cool. And then she also modeled expected behaviors during class time, like whispering. Like if they were talking a little bit louder than she'd like, she would ask them to whisper in a whispering voice. And then things like following along while reading with their finger to keep their place. She would also follow along with her finger, and when they forget, she would remind them by saying things like, "I'm watching to see if everyone's fingers are tracking." And then she would put her finger up and she'd tell them, "Fingers up, get your fingers ready." And so that was great examples of modeling expected behaviors. She also used a variety of media tools to help her students succeed. Computers and Chromebooks used daily for lessons, filler activities, brain breaks. She used her smartboard daily, which most teachers do. And effective management means having the curriculum that the students can relate to, that's beneficial to the flow of the day, that will capture students' attention and keep them interested in the material. And she definitely had all that with her use of media. And effective classroom managers work to improve self-concepts of students, improve their self-esteem, empower achievement. She improved their self-concepts by constantly praising them. And kindergartners are learning how to read all year long, so they have their list of sight words that they learn weekly. And Mrs. S actually has something she calls a Smart Cookie Club, which is when she tests the students individually, and if they know all their sight words, then they pass the verbal assessment with her and get a paper crown that says, "I know all my sight words," a bag of cookies, they get their picture taken, and then she kind of praises them in front of the whole class, announcing that a new student joined the Smart Cookie Club, and she'll say their name and everyone will clap and praise the student. And I noticed while students were being honored that they seemed super proud of themselves, they were smiling big. And then for the students who were kind of struggling to memorize their words, she encouraged school-family linkages by telling her students, "Hey, ask your parents to help you study your words so you can test into the club," kind of encouraging them to take their sight words home and have that interaction with their parents with their schoolwork. And I could tell, like I said, that the club was both motivating, raising the students' self-esteem, but it also showed what empowering achievement looks like, because the kids are in control of whether or not they work hard to learn their words and to pass the test and join the club. So they have the power to achieve if they want to achieve. And then another way that she kind of helped a student improve their self-esteem and self-concept, there was a girl who was being super grumpy, and she was like, "Hey, like, you're a nice person. You're not mean. Like, let's use a nice tone." And he probably didn't know what you were wanting, and kind of helping diffuse the situation, but also reminding the student, "Hey, like, you're nice. Let's use a nice tone." Reminding them of a characteristic that they have. And then effective classroom managers also work to plan and prepare, which Roberta Burns talks about preventative versus consequential, and the with itness from Kunin, I believe, and having smooth transitions and helping students self-regulate. Effective managers try to let their students not get bored, which can lead to behavioral issues if they do get bored. So they plan and prepare, and Mrs. S did a lot of preparing during recesses, lunch, before and after school, and while students were busy doing activities in the classroom. She'd pass out papers, and she'd get the smartboard ready on her computer so she could just turn the smartboard on and click on the tab she needed. And there's a popular website that I've actually used while subbing before called Go Noodle, and she actually pulled that up and had her helper choose a song, and the students were dancing. And while they were dancing, she was passing out papers to the tables, and then by the time they were done, she was back at her desk and ready to move on. And this really led to a smooth transition. She wasn't trying to pass out papers after they were done. And this is another ability teachers with good management skills possess. During math and reading rotations, students knew exactly where to go and what to do, which created, again, smooth transitions. She just had to click a button and the groups on the board would rotate so they knew where to go. And because it's a routine activity, they already knew that at this station they do worksheets, at this station they have specific sites on the computer that they work on, at this station they work with a teacher on whatever she has to work on that day. So they kind of can self-regulate because they know what they're going to be doing. And during the teachers group, they do a lot of teacher to group socialization, but then she'll work with each student individually, so they'll have student to teacher socialization, and then she'll have the students kind of chat with each other, which has the student to student interaction, social interaction. So they get a lot of different socialization during these rotations, which is great. And then they have working on the computers with math and reading, which media is very popular with the kids. So although they're doing educational activities, they're actually enjoying it because it's virtual, and oftentimes their lessons are in the form of games, which kids love games. Effective classroom managers also work to be able to overlap, which is dealing with more than one activity at the same time, according to Roberta Burns, and teaching appropriate social roles and implementing developmental skills. During these stations, even though she's in her own group working with students, she actually will overlap, and she would get them started on their assignment, and then she would start testing for the Smart Cookie Club. So, and she'd manage the rest of the class, keeping them on task, preventing any behavior issues. And because sometimes when the students think that the teacher is busy, they'll try to do what they want. And so she kind of kept things running smoothly, staying on all the kids and making sure they were working hard. Some of the effective management in her classroom, like what she would say, it would be like, hey, you don't need help. You know what to do for self-regulation. Our heads are down if we're ready. Expectations. Glad you were paying attention. That's showing self-esteem. Are you fixing it? What's wrong with this? Take a deep breath. What are you supposed to be doing? Self-regulation. Have they asked us anything yet? What do you think? Turn to your partner. Student-to-student socialization. Is that what you're saying? Is that a fact? It's not a competition. Are you making a good choice? Is that your job to tell her that? And that one's kind of like a social role, saying, hey, you're doing an incorrect role. That's not your place. Nice job, self-esteem. How did you know? And when you are ready, you can come back. And that one's kind of like a self-regulation because they're in control of if they're able to come back and join the group. And that one was used when they were reading a Scholastic book on the Smartboard and the Scholastic magazine. Some of the students weren't following along, so she would have them go sit at their desk with their head down until they were able to get back on track. And so if they felt like they were going to be able to get back on track, they could come back and join the group again. So this was, helping them to hold conversations, clarification, encouraging verbalization, and for cognitive development. So she just used a lot of great techniques, and she had a lot of great characteristics that really helped her be an effective manager in the classroom. And I really just overall enjoyed observing her classroom, and hope to take some of what I've learned into my classroom in the future.